17:30 wchodzimy do garderoby tej oto Denzela Curry'ego i porozmawiamy z amerykańskim raperem o wielu ważnych rzeczach. Zadamy mu różne pytania, ja mu zadam. Spędzimy z nim pół godziny dokładnie, później zrobimy też foty. No i chyba robimy cięcie, a później zaproszę was już do salki wywiadowej. Hello everyone, I'm Lech Podhalicz, a newonce journalist, and in this place, in this very beautiful location, we are talking to the very special artists Zeltron, Raven Miyagi, Aquarius Killa. Ladies and gents, this is Denzel Curry. Please welcome him kindly. And I'd like to start with the question about Melt My Eyes, Your Future, obviously, because it's mainly inspired by, I will quote that, a combination of what's going on right now in the world. So, what are your thoughts on what's actually happening around the world, and both as an artist and Denzel Curry as a human being?
Okay, as an artist, it just gives me a lot of things to talk about and shed light on, and be able to bring to the public of what's going down in a catchy and exciting way. But as the person, it's I'm looking at stuff that happened in Buffalo when that guy had the gun and he had the N-word on the gun, and had a nigga on the gun and was shooting all these black people. That was fucked up. And on top of that, the police, if I was to do something like that, the police would kill me right then and there. No questions asked, right there. They'll kill me for less. You get what I'm saying? And then you have what happened in Texas where the cops wouldn't even go into the school, but parents are literally breaking free and going to go get their kids. A lady actually came back out with her kids, and saved her kid's life when that whole thing was happening. And it's just the fact that they weaponizing mental health with everything that was going on, saying these people are mentally ill and this, that, and the third. But what's the real common denominator? What's going on with everything that's happening? We're talking about gun control. We're talking about people should have psychiatric evaluations when it comes down to both the police and the people that's behind the guns. That's quote unquote mentally ill when they're just killing people for no reason. You get what I'm saying? And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, as a person, this is all fucked up. So how can I channel this into the art and as an artist?
How you find yourself in these very dark times? I mean, hard, it's difficult.
I look at it like this. The world is going to be 50-50, you know? But that means it makes up 100%, correct? So you're going to have good and you're going to have bad, and they're both going to be equal. You know what I'm saying? If things happen and it looks unfair and unbalanced, it's actually balanced. The good is gonna come, and it's gonna come in an equal amount of, you know what I'm saying, in a good amount of time. But that bad, you gotta deal with it now, because you know that good's gonna come later. But that's the way I kind of see the world and everything. And the one thing that is 100% is my spirit, you know? So I can't let nobody taint that.
So do you consider yourself as an activist, or?
Hell no.
No.
Do I consider myself as an activist? Yeah. No. Activists are real people that's on the street. Me, I'm just an artist. Even Malcolm X said it to himself. They got people that have jobs that go out there to be an activist, to be in the street, be on the front line, talk about the real social issues, because they actually know it by heart and by hand. I'm just going off what I see. But you got people that you got politicians that put people that's in power that are artists. They give us you supposed to say this. What you have to say about this? I'm an artist. I'm not a politician. My art drives shit. My art isn't meant for, you know what I'm saying, to be consumed in the activist way. I'm just telling you, as a person on the ground with the people, that this is what I see. You know what I'm saying? And it's up to activists who see it the same way to push it. And I'm just helping them push the envelope. But I don't see myself as an activist.
Yeah, sure. And what about mental health, especially men's mental health? Because you are rapping on Melt My Eyes a lot about this. And then there is a bigger problem with mental health and human psyche nowadays, you know, and you know that.
Yeah.
And so everyday struggle, a lot of stress, war in Ukraine, Russian aggression, right? And this mass shootings in US or in every other place in the world. So based on your experience, based on your wisdom, I don't know, conversations with people, with your friends, what are you doing to just figure it out, how to deal with it, with mental health struggles?
Well, mental health struggles, like the way I dealt with it was going to therapy, and my therapist was like, you need a base of like something that you believe in, like a faith, like, you know, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Islamic, or, you know what I'm saying, or Christianity, whatever you want to put it, you know what I'm saying? Man, you just got to find that base. Me, I've been on the search of just finding that base. So the more I'm connected to the one up there, you know what I'm saying, is going to make sure he guides me in the right direction. And that's how I could like pretty much cope it. It's a coping mechanism for real, you know? Same with, you know what I'm saying, with most things, I just find different ways to cope that's not detrimental to me, because that's what it is at the end of the day. We're just coping with what could possibly happen, but we're living in reality and we're trying to escape that every day. And I'm not trying to escape that. I'm trying to be one with reality so I can understand, like, okay, this is reality, this is what I gotta do. And a lot of things aren't in my control, but the things that are in my control, how do I go about that? And that's how I view life.
Mm-hmm. What self-care means to you during these difficult times?
Self-care in this difficult time is being able to carry yourself with respect. That's one. Two is more so of being able to take care of yourself, like, you know, make sure everything in your body is clean, eating clean, doing the right thing, and like being able to like keep yourself clean. And I mean it in the physical sense, and I mean it as a moral sense, that you got to keep yourself clean. And it's very hard to do that because we always try to bridge that gap of I could be perfect, and it never comes out that way. You know what I'm saying? People will modify their bodies just to be perfect. You know what I'm saying? That's like high maintenance. But if you right with yourself, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? That's taking care of yourself. Mm-hmm. Take care of your mind, take care of your heart, and take care of your soul. That's the real self-care. And then everything else will follow suit. Mm-hmm. If you care that much about those three, then you taking showers every day, cleaning yourself, grooming yourself, making sure you're presentable. It's all gonna follow. Mm-hmm.
And you also were rapping about a lot of addictions. I mean, alcohol. I will quote, drinking, I be drinking, I need AA, or I've been smoking chronic. It's from the last. On the other hand, you were also rapping about psychedelics. So, you know, also the spiritual stuff. Let's say this using medication would make me the perfect escapist, angels, or book of magic, psilocybin, man, is a talisman, ills. So what did psychedelics gave you? What were you experiencing by them?
Yeah, you said, wait, say that last one.
What did...
I didn't say psilocybin, actually. They quoted my lyrics wrong.
This is Book of Magic.
Yeah, from the ills. You quoted the ills too. Yeah, I didn't say psilocybin. They got that.
I took
you got it from Genius?
Yeah,
Genius, you be fucking up. Stop. Anyway.
Okay, so let's explain this. or you don't want to?
It's literally like this. I said, Book of Magic, psilocybin is the talisman. Speak my name in vain, it would be met with some challenges. I devised a way to rise, time to strategize. The pure force of Zeltron make me alkaline.
Okay, so no psychedelics.
No psychedelics on that line.
So what about addictions, drugs or alcohol?
Well, mainly it was sex addiction for me. Mm-hmm. So that was like pretty much my vice. Mm-hmm. I'm not really a heavy drinker, I'm not really a heavy smoker. Mm-hmm. Sex, it was like that was me.
But you did the job, or you were trying with the therapist or whatever?
Therapist. I've been in therapy for a minute, you know what I'm saying? That really helped me out along the way and shit. But yeah, that's what I was really like into, you know what I'm saying? Like drinking, it wasn't that much, but when drinking is involved, it amplifies it, mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
So let's make to these questions, I think that's really interesting, about samurai figures and role models in your lyrics, in your artistry. This is a Zel Kurosawa film, directed, written and starred by one and only Zeltron. This is Walking, and then I'm Zatoichi leading the blind. Also, this is Zatoichi with Slow Tie. So if you could tell me more about the samurai role models and why is it so important to you?
I mean, when I like something, I always go back and research it, you feel me? So for instance, Star Wars, right? So I was watching Star Wars and shit like that, and I wanted to go back and where they got the inspiration from to make Star Wars and stuff like that, you know? So I went back, and what I found was Akira Kurosawa's films starring Toshiro Mifune, which led me to a documentary which they talked about Toshiro Mifune, and Toshiro Mifune was like the main guy that they used for all those samurai movies like Yojimbo, Seven Samurai, Senjuro. Like they used him for all those movies. And he was like, oh, the prominent figure. There's also a movie where Sanjiro meets Zatoichi. You know what I'm saying? It was like a feature where they met for the first time. And Zatoichi, it was also a dominant figure there. He's the blind samurai. And I use him as a metaphor for saying the blind can't lead the blind, you know? But we try to lead each other anyway. That was the whole premise of the whole Zatoichi. And then I just thought about what my grandma was saying. You know, Steve, you know, she would always say, Ray Charles can't lead Stevie Wonder and vice versa. You know what I'm saying? If you don't know where you're going, how can you lead somebody else to know where you're going? Which brings back to when you asked me if I'm an activist, and I said no, because I can't lead these people to where I'm going because I might lead them astray from the path they are already taking. But I can shed light on what's happening to aid what real activists are actually doing.
But these are also universal truths, you know? And I mean, all of these are which are speaking about, but you said that also when you have some struggles with yourself, you cannot lead the people, that's right, and I completely agree with you, but so you get along with this samurai philosophy, rather, but in pop, like speaking of pop culture or speaking of the way of living, maybe?
Just way of living, because like, you know, I read the Book of Five Rings. You ever read that book?
No.
The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi.
I don't.
Well, it's a book,
I write it down.
and he was telling like what the difference between his school and all these other different samurai schools and stuff like that, and how to go to war and how to attack and how to strike and this, that, and the third. But he was breaking it down in a way where it was basically you could take it apart and adapt each part of it to your life.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay, and so follow up about anime heroes archetypes, because you mentioned Dragon Ball, Naruto, Cowboy Bebop, Fist of the North Star, and so I guess that means you're some kind of lone ranger, or just you need the teamwork or people around you to achieve goals. I mean, this existential one and artistic ones.
You always need a team. Like Cowboy Bebop, even they didn't want a team, but Jet Black gets Spike Spiegel out of some crazy situations and vice versa. Same with Faith. Faith gets them out of some crazy situations and they got to get her out of some crazy situations. So it's always a team effort, especially when it comes down to certain things. Like if you watch Dragon Ball Z, if you rewatch it, they got to get Goku out of some situations. Majority of the time, they're fighting one guy, and that one guy is so powerful that they got to jump him low-key. You know what I mean? And it's always about teamwork. Same with me. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for like certain things in my career and like me working with a team of people. You know what I'm saying? From the beginning to now. It's just the only difference is it's not everybody trying to do the same thing. Everybody got a different role. That's the only difference.
And what do you think? We spoke earlier about being an activist. You said you are not an activist, but you also criticized TikTok, and now we have war literally transmitted on TikTok, and that's from the last. And your so-called revolution ain't nothing but a post.
It's true.
Yeah. So
it's the truth.
Yeah, it's the truth.
We all do it. Everyone does it. We see something on the internet. We see something that's a conflict happening in a certain place, certain thing. All they do is this. Why we ain't marching like how we used to do back in the day to actually make changes? Like Martin Luther King and all of them was actually making changes. Like these people were actually making changes. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, what the fuck? Like, what are we really doing? I see people that do march, like when George Floyd thing happened, they was out there, they was in the street, they was doing what they gotta do. And I wanted to do my part too. So I helped raise money to like make sure I aid the culture and aid what was going on. You know what I mean? We're doing like benefit concerts and stuff like that, which are pushing it along. People were out there on the ground, you get me? But when you got stuff that's happening right now and then people were like, you're gonna see people on the ground, don't get me wrong. But majority of the people that are like super self-righteous but don't want to be on the front line, they're gonna tweet. I never seen you on the front line. You know what I'm saying? You probably never seen me on the front line. So I'm just as hypocritical as them too.
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say so because you said that you're making a benefits concert. You're giving your money to charity or to organizations, to foundations, right? Which are helping people. And on the other hand, there is a lot of people, I don't know, experts and I don't know, philosophers maybe, etc., artists maybe as well, who are not on the streets, but maybe it's because their mental health. And they want to just give this particular people who are in trouble some support just by not being in the, on the streets, for example. But
most people go on the front line just to take a picture like, I was there.
That's true, that's true.
Like, that's just whack. Like,
that's true.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not that type of nigga. Like, same way, I remember when Nipsey Hussle passed and everybody was going down there. One of my homies wanted to go down there and I was like, why are you going down there and you never went down there before? And he was like, I want to support black businesses. And I was like, there's many black businesses you can support. You know what I'm saying? Don't go down there because you wasn't really supporting them like that when he was alive.
And a lot of people are just trying to do, stuff globally when it's global and not local. And when some, black communities, for example, or people in Europe, when in places where is war now, we can just do some things locally and not globally, just for fame or some likes or whatever.
Yeah, just to be like, oh, I was there.
Yeah.
Most people do that shit just to be like, I was there. Oh, check, I did that. Like, most people want the good old pat on the back.
Yeah, and sometimes it can help in some ways because of their engagement or their millions of people who are following them, and maybe some of them will do the right thing. I don't know, but overall it's just lame, I think. And what about cancel culture? I need to ask you about, because you say the wrong thing, you get cancelled for tweeting. It's from the last. What are your thoughts on this issue? And do you consider cancel culture as a useful tool or a complete disaster, or maybe something in the middle of it?
It started off as something useful. I can't say it's a complete disaster. It started off as something useful when you needed people to be canceled. Like when it was canceling like Bill Cosby or R. Kelly and stuff like that. Like that was acceptable. But the moment you start canceling people just because they said one thing, like they made a bad choice of saying the wrong thing on the wrong day, and now you want to just cancel them. Like motherfuckers want to cancel comedians now for making jokes. That's their job.
Yeah.
You're fucking stupid. Like, don't be stupid. Like, that's their job. Their job is to make us laugh. Their job is to do the research into like making us laugh. I can understand he was like on some Adolf Hitler shit, and it was like kill all these motherfuckers, like kill all trans people, kill all gay people, kill all black people, kill all white people, kill all this. You know what I'm saying? I can understand it was like that. And your ass deserved to be canceled if you was on that type of energy. But if you just making jokes, you know what I'm saying? Like jokes is jokes. But whoever takes that serious, that's the motherfucker you should cancel, not the person who just made the joke. We all have emotions. We all have a sense of humor. Like, why would you cancel a comedian when we all have a sense of humor? God blessed everybody with a sense of humor. So all of a sudden, like, just because you did this, it's not funny? Like, you know what I'm saying?
And sometimes it's the last hope for our communities, the jokes, the humor, to survive during these times when everything is, going down. I said that earlier. Economic crisis, wars, shootings, whatever. And then you have comedians who...
They shed light on those situations. And they make it bearable.
And sometimes they're saying some words which everybody are afraid of saying, but this is also about context, I think. Not about just saying some, inappropriate sentences to the audience, and that's all, right?
Yeah, it's not like they saying like they excluding, you know what I'm saying? Most people get mad because they excluding a certain type of person, but it's just like, bro, comedians talk about everybody.
Yes, that's true.
It does not matter who you're talking about.
True.
If you're in their line of fire, you're going to get fired on. That's how comedians work. They like roasting people and they like making jokes. And majority of the jokes be accurate. Some of them be not accurate at all. You know what I'm saying? The ones that are not accurate at all, you like, man, fuck this guy. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes people get mad at the truth.
Because sometimes it's connected with their identity. And if the truth is different from their views, that's the.
But everybody's blessed with a different perspective. You get what I'm saying? I'm not saying like, all right, what they're saying is completely right, but I'm pretty sure like everybody has a sense of humor and they could take a joke. You know what I'm saying? Just it's a joke. You know what I mean?
You can practice it also.
You feel me? I think what would bridge that gap between people is when you actually don't be ignorant to. Like if comedians I'm pretty sure comedians have this thing where they research what they're gonna talk about. And I know they do, you know? So they talk about, it's not like they're going into it blindly. Like, I know this person, and then, you know, you talk about them, you know what I'm saying? You like,
Yeah,
you
sure.
do proper research, learn these people, be friends with these people, understand these people. Once you understand these people, you could be able to be like, okay, then you can make the jokes, and then now everybody is along with it. Because not only are you firing on this type of people,
Sure.
or this type of race, you're firing on everybody. So everybody's gonna get it. That's the only way it could like work out. You know what I'm saying?
So you think Chris Rock didn't deserve what he got from Will Smith?
The joke would have just been a tasteless. Listen, that would have just been a tasteless joke.
Yeah.
If Will Smith didn't immortalize it with a slap. That slap immortalized the joke.
Yeah.
Like, then they start breaking back Chris Rock's jokes from when he was firing on Jada a long time ago, when he talked about, oh, her boycotting the Grammys is like me trying to boycott Rihanna's panties. I wasn't invited. Like, I would have never remembered that shit.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, nobody remembered that. Like, you immortalized his joke for life just because you got mad.
Yeah, a lot of memes.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff. But also, what about the mistakes of the youth? The youthness, right? What if you are 16 or 18 or 22 and you just cannot do a mistake, because you will be cancelled if you are 30 or 55 then?
We live in a society where perfection is the thing. You gotta be perfect. You can't fuck up. Like, that's why I look at people and I tell them straight up, like, hey, I'm not a perfect person. I go out in there and tell them I'm not perfect. I tell my fans, I am not a perfect person. Don't follow me. I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm gonna tell you what it is straight up. If you don't like it, fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is what it is. I'm not a perfect person. I know I'm supposed to be like a role model or whatever the fuck,
Sure.
a celebrity, whatever perception people have of me. This guy is like God. No, I'm not God. God is up there. I'm Denzel. I'm on the ground. I'm with you. Rappers can die just like you. Like, artists can die just like you. I could live just like you. One mess up, my whole life will be, you know what I'm saying, in shambles. I'm one bad decision and one good decision away from having a better life or having a fucked up life.
Yeah, let's take Pop Smoke. I mean, you can get a lot of money and, you know, starting to be a celebrity, and then you just die. 3 more questions, please. One is about Ukraine, because there will be a lot of people, I mean, here in Warsaw and also in Krakow's gig, the day after tomorrow from Ukraine. And is there anything you'd like to tell them about, you know, the situation, the Russian aggression in Ukraine or the war?
With Ukraine, I don't like what's happening with Russia invading the Ukraine. I don't like it at all. Because not only have I been to Ukraine, I've been to Russia. I've been to both places. I have fans there and I have fans in the Ukraine. Like, I support the Ukraine people with what's going on and they're defending their home front. I'm gonna support that because it's another place invading your area. If somebody invaded my space, what you think I'm gonna do?
Yeah, sure. Defend
Like,
it.
I feel
Yeah.
you. Like, I feel it wholeheartedly. It just saddens me that I know both sides and I have fans on both sides and I can't, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I can't do nothing about it. That's out of my control.
Okay.
What can I really do? The only thing I
You
can
can
do
send some
is
money maybe, or posting something on your social medias, or telling the people on gigs to support Ukraine and to, I mean, you know, it's black and white, like totally.
it's very black and white.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I see what's happening and I'm just like, damn. It sucks because we were supposed to go there. We were supposed to go to both places.
I was in Ukraine, not in Russia, but now I can't imagine traveling to Russia anymore, you know. And I hope that it will end soon and you know, not spread to the Europe or US maybe, or the world conflict, because it's scary as fuck.
Man.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't need another World War
No.
III on our hands.
Okay, the last question will be about your thoughts on experimental and ambitious Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. Because in one of the last verses on Hills, your rapping played the bad guy just to finish the race first, because the last guy was nice, but he ended up dying of thirst. So what do you think about Lamar abandoning previous preachy attitude and just focusing on this Kendrick Lamar abandoning his preachy attitude in lyrics sometimes, you know? And now
Well, with Kendrick, his eyes truly melted. And what
Yeah.
I mean by his eyes truly melted, he sees the big
Yeah,
picture.
yeah.
He understands. Like, I like Kendrick Lamar's album. You know what I'm saying? I understand what he was going through. I could tell he did a whole bunch of therapy to do that. The same way I did a whole bunch of therapy to do that, to get to that point. Kendrick has a better understanding, you know what I mean? I have a good understanding of what's happening. He has a good understanding of what's happening. The only difference is he goes into detail, and me, I went into detail in my way.
Yeah, but you... Yeah, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
But you got in common these things with, you know, focusing on him, on yourself, on your family, on your, you know, on your life, not only on being a savior for the communities, for the people, for the fans. I think that you have that in common.
I mean, because we understand we're only human and we're not perfect. Once we was trying to be perfect because the industry breeds you to look like this, be with this, do that, you know? And it's not like that at all. We're human beings, bro. Like, people don't treat us like humans anymore.
That's true.
And I just want to be a human being. I don't like, it got to that point where I think Kendrick got to the point where he understood that and he was just like, I just want to be me. I don't care about all this.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the hits. It wasn't about none of that. Same with my album. It wasn't about the hits whatsoever. It was never about the hits. It was about how I felt. It was about what was real. It was about what was raw, what I got going on. Same with what he had going on. What was really bothering him, what he had to talk about. That was really what it was. And I could understand, like, where is that? Like, he just shedded that. That was the ego. It's low-key like an ego death, if you think about it. You know?
Yeah, this remarkable words, I choose me, I'm sorry. Yeah, like repeated like mantra in the last song, The Mirror, on Mr. Morale. So the last question will be about what are your wishes for the future and which kind of world you'd like to see and live in, both US, Europe.
1, I want to raise my kid. 2, I want to be a martial arts specialist. 3, I want to be able to be a cartoonist and get my comic book off the ground. 4, I want to be able to do like cool stuff and, you know what I'm saying, be at a place where I could elevate further with my music and whatever the case may be, and stop at a certain point in time, because I don't want to do music forever. I know I don't want to do music forever. I could live off music for the rest of my life because I'm independent, you know, but I just want to be to a point where I'm like...
Yeah, but it is some kind of blessing, you know?
It is a blessing. Yeah. God blessed me with the talent to write and use my voice. So I want to use my voice in the right way.
I think we're done here, and that was a pleasure.
All right, we're done here.